We are here at the Open IoT Summit, and we have with us Peter from Red Hat. Fedora has three, editions: Fedora Workstation, Cloud, and you have the Server edition.
Correct.
So where does the IoT fit in?
So IoT is going to become the fourth edition in Fedora. So there'll be, a month ago, I did a presentation to the council on IoT as an objective for Fedora. And we had a fairly wide-ranging discussion about various use cases of IoT or various use cases Fedora could be used for in an IoT context. Mm-hmm. The council then went and discussed it and decided that it was a worthwhile pursuit that Fedora should be getting involved in. And I was originally expecting it to be a spin with a special interest group attached to it. And the council decided after discussion that it would be better off to be an addition with an official working group attached. So that was approved last week, and we're now in the process of getting all the technical bits and pieces into place to make that happen.
So now let's talk about what kind of packages or what kind of whole IoT. What will be the name of it? Flock?
At the moment, it's probably Fedora IoT. It may change as we go along. I haven't actually, in fact, it's the first person that's actually mentioned naming to me. So that's something else I'll have to add to my to-do list to work out. But at the moment, it'll be just probably IoT edition.
Okay. So when you look at IoT space, what problem do you see where Fedora IoT will kind of address these challenges or try to solve those problems?
Traditional distributions like Fedora have solved a number of problems that the IoT space has. Things like ready and consistent security updates and rigorous processes on dealing with those updates. And enterprise and traditional community Linux distributions have already solved those problems. I don't see that an IoT distribution needs to reinvent all these wheels where we've got a perfectly good solution.
Can you talk about what will be the actual distribution look like?
Across most of the editions, they are looking at doing Atomic, and there is certainly a certain level of focus on Atomic, but because there's a lot of traditional users that are used to the DNF upgrade and the RPMs and a lot of different use cases where Atomic doesn't necessarily fit that well, the traditional RPM DNF method is still, in the vast majority of cases, the preferred method. In the IoT case, we're lucky because we have basically an entire new canvas where we can experiment and we can be bleeding edge, and we don't necessarily need to worry about legacy or traditional users, so the intention there is that we will be doing a purely Atomic edition. There will be no traditional sort of DNF upgrade. There will be the ability to layer RPMs on top of that. But the core base of the operating system platform will be solely Atomic. And the general way that we'll then add functionality to that will either be through Atomic layers or through containers.
Do you think there will be some kind of participation or engagement or code sharing between Container Linux and Fedora IoT?
One of the things that really excites me about the core OS side of things is they have for an IoT point of view, they have a very good updates platform. And so there'll be components like that really excite me. As to how that all settles out, I think time will tell. And I'm very pragmatic, and I look forward to seeing how that all settles out. And I have little doubt that there'll certainly be some components in there that will fit into the Fedora IoT space or the Fedora distribution as a whole when the powers that be within Red Hat work that out and things start to settle down.
When you look at Fedora, we always, most people look at it as, upstream for RHEL, and it doesn't have a very long, it's had a very short life cycle. It's not supported for RHEL. But when you look at IoT devices, you sell one device and it's there for, a lot of time. So does Fedora even fit in that use case? Are you planning Fedora just as a kind of test bed and then Red Hat will come as a solution?
With regards to Red Hat as a solution, I can't comment on, and I only work in the community space, so that is nothing that I can really talk about. In terms of the upgrade cycles with Fedora, Fedora has a 13-month release life cycle per release. One of the nice things with Atomic is that, and the Atomic host team already does this, is they move the stable branch from Fedora 27 to 28 to 29, and it's a seamless roll forward. And in the base IoT package set, we're probably going to look at 400-500 packages at the maximum. And other functionality will be then layered on top of that, whether it be containers or layers or whatever it happens to be. And we'll be offering a couple of different options there. But the base OS will be small enough that rolling it from 28 to 29 to 30 will be a minor upgrade process. Users probably won't even notice. So we won't be in a situation where necessarily the underlying Fedora release that it's based on will necessarily matter to the IoT space. So it will become more of a rolling distribution that just seamlessly rolls forward, as opposed to having a 13-month life cycle where you then have to do a major upgrade.
Right.
So the intention there is basically to do probably, the thought at this point in time is actually monthly releases of Fedora. So be very agile, have a monthly release at one point in the future. For one of those releases, we will jump between, say, Fedora 28 and Fedora 29, when 29 is stable enough to do so. And on that particular monthly update, the user will see a slightly larger update delta than what they would be getting on the average monthly release, but the underlying libraries and various other bits and pieces will be just rolled forward to the next release, or the next Fedora release in which it's based on. So from that perspective, the traditional, or what's seen as a traditional problem with Fedora of the short life cycle, I personally don't believe is going to be an issue.
What will be the expected size of the image for this?
Time will tell, small as possible. So I've had a few people ask me, or there has been interest to run it on devices as small as 128 meg of RAM. I'm hoping that the base image will fit in probably a gig of size. Still, like, looking at that, I know we've got some dependency.
1 GB for the base image?
Yeah, for storage.
Okay.
But looking at the ARM minimal image at the moment, I think we're probably around 700-800 meg on disk. There's some known bits and pieces there where we can shrink that, reasonable amounts. So I wouldn't be surprised if the base image could get as low as 500 meg. In the next couple of weeks, we'll have our first compose, and basically from there we will sort of tweak, optimize, and work out where things can be reduced.
Cloud is always a critical part of IoT. Without cloud, there is no IT. So where will that cloud come from?
My plan is ultimately, in the medium to long term, to have the ability to demo full end-to-end. So you could use OpenShift like your shirt to run sort of data analytics in the cloud. And I'm looking forward to being able to demo, say, a full open source end-to-end IoT platform with Fedora in there, potentially acting as a gateway to, say, maybe some Zephyr devices, which is an open source RTOS designed to run on very constrained devices. So we may have a bunch of sensors running on a Bluetooth mesh, which Fedora IoT is acting as a gateway for, and that's then feeding the data into a cloud platform that's running on OpenShift or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so the cloud side of it and the analytics and that side of it that will run in a data center is certainly on my agenda to enable us to do full end-to-end on Fedora. All of that takes time,
right?
And so it's certainly something that's on my list of stuff that the Fedora IoT working group needs to address and work with and what have you. As to when that happens depends on demand, schedules, and just available
people's
time.
Interest also.
Yep.
So what kind of platform you will target with IoT? Where can people run it to test it, or to build for it or develop for it?
I mean, there'll be platforms. So platforms like the Raspberry Pi obviously is very common in the IoT home automation makerspace. I mentioned the BeagleBone. That's also very popular in that sort of space as well. So I see those style of platforms. I've spoken with other people that are looking at running it on much higher end platforms to do, much higher workloads. I've had interest from people that are potentially interested in using it in conjunction with AI and machine learning things to do various different IoT-based machine learning things, and those sort of platforms tend to need, much larger compute capacity, whether that be GPU, or some of the neural networking processors that some of the companies are starting to announce now. So in terms of platforms that it can be run on, it will be able to be run on most of the platforms that standard Fedora runs on. We will in time select a number of, or a handful of reference devices, which will be our focus in terms of testing and enablement. And when we become an edition, we'll obviously have blocking requirements and various other bits and pieces. So from a testing point of view, the reference platforms that we decide on, which is still undecided as to exactly what they're going to be, will be the ones that we will be focusing on from the base, because in terms of things like ARM platforms out there, ARM single board computers, there are literally hundreds of them now. Right. And it's just not possible for us to be able to widely test all of those devices in all the possible use cases that people will think of.
Will it be a community-driven project where anyone can come in, or will it be very heavy-handed approach by either the Red Hat or Fedora community?
The aim is, and the reason I am doing this in Fedora is to engage the community in it. I mean, I have a lot of ideas around IoT and how we do it on Fedora, but obviously there's a lot of things that I haven't thought of. People have different opinions, so we'll be discussing them and working out the best route. And the community always in Fedora has come up with a lot of really good ideas. With the Fedora IoT spin, ultimately we want to be a small, fast, secure, edition that will be fast moving. And, we've got the ability in this space to sort of bolt down security using things like seccomp and systemd and various other bits and pieces, and hopefully in the IoT space be quite innovative with regards to things like security and stuff like that. And we'll see where it goes. And we can't do that without community engagement.
I think it was a great discussion. I mean, as I said earlier, I did not even know about it, so it's an awesome project. I'm looking forward to. Thanks a lot for your time, and it was really nice talking to you today.
Yeah, thanks. It's been fun.
Yep. Thank you.